Welcome to the Korean Mafia romance stories. The channel will bring you stories of strong bonds, cultural differences, passionate love, and unforgettable dramatic events. If you love interracial love stories and cinematic storytelling, then this is the place for you. Enjoy listening. Please subscribe to the channel to hear more great stories. I did not know who sent the wine, but I knew exactly what it did the moment Sung Jae-kong saw my name on that label. The entire room shifted without a single word spoken. Conversations died mid-sentence, glasses froze halfway to lips, and the soft hum of money and lies that filled our private club collapsed into silence. I work nights managing a members-only club in Manhattan where billionaires pretend they are just businessmen, where secrets are currency and power walks in without introduction. I have seen men lose millions in one conversation and smile like nothing happened. I have seen women negotiate futures over a glass of champagne that costs more than most people make in a month. And in that entire building, I am the only one who never looks away when Sung Jae speaks. That alone makes me a problem. Sung Jae-kong owns more than this building. He owns the security systems, the contracts, and the men who pretend they are independent. He does not raise his voice. He does not need to. When he walks through the executive floor, people adjust their posture without realizing it. I never did. Maybe that is why he notices everything I do. Maybe that is why, when the bottle arrived, it did not stay mine for more than 5 seconds. It was a rare French vintage, the kind collectors fight over in quiet auctions. No sender. No return address. Just my name written in clean, deliberate ink. And a single line tucked beneath the ribbon. Friday will change everything. I felt it before I understood it. That subtle shift in the air, like pressure building before a storm. I was already reaching to move it out of sight when his hand stopped me. Not rough. Not rushed. Just final. He looked at the bottle, then at me. His expression did not change, but something colder settled behind his eyes. I have seen him angry. I have seen him bored. This was neither. This was something precise. Calculated. Dangerous. His voice came low, controlled, cutting straight through the silence he created. Who sent you that wine? Not a question. A demand dressed as one. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I refused to be cornered. I told him I did not know. I told him it was probably a mistake. But even as the words left my mouth, I could feel it. He did not believe me. Or worse, he did not care if it was true. Because whatever this was, it had nothing to do with the wine itself. It had everything to do with me. And for the first time since I started working in his world, I saw something I had never seen before. Not control. Not dominance. Something sharper. Something that felt like a line had just been crossed without permission. I held his gaze anyway. I always do. But this time, there was a question sitting just beneath the surface, one I could not ignore no matter how steady my voice sounded. If a man like him reacts like that over something so small, then what exactly did that bottle just start? The next morning, nothing looked different. The same polished marble floors reflected soft gold light, the same quiet conversations floated through the air, and the same men in tailored suits pretended they were not measuring each other with every glance. But I felt at the moment I stepped off the elevator. The atmosphere had tightened, like the building itself was holding its breath. And at the center of it, whether anyone else noticed or not, was him. Sung Jae did not greet me. He did not need to. His presence followed me instead. Subtle. Constant. I caught it in the way security adjusted their routes, in the way my access logs were reviewed twice before I even reached my office, in the way my schedule had already been printed and placed neatly on my desk, highlighted in places I did not mark. I stared at it for a full 5 seconds. Every meeting, every break, every gap in my night accounted for. That was not coincidence. That was surveillance. I walked straight to his office without calling ahead. No one stopped me. No one ever does. He was standing by the window when I entered, looking out over the city like he owned every light in it. Maybe he did. I closed the door behind me harder than necessary. The sound echoed sharp and deliberate. He did not turn immediately. He let the silence stretch, like he was deciding whether I was worth his attention in that moment. Then, slowly, he faced me. You are tracking me now? I asked, holding up the printed schedule. My voice was steady, but my pulse was not. I do not like being watched. I do not like being managed. And I definitely do not like being treated like something that needs to be contained. His eyes moved briefly to the paper, then back to me. I am aware of what happens in my building. That is not awareness, I said. That is control. A faint shift crossed his expression. Not surprise. Not anger. Recognition. Like I had said something that mattered more than I realized. He stepped closer, not invading, but not distant either. Just enough to make the air between us feel heavier. You received something you cannot explain, he said quietly. In my world, that is not a coincidence. In my world, I shot back, I do not assume every unknown thing is a threat. He held my gaze for a long moment. Too long. Long enough for something unspoken to settle between us. Then he said, almost too calmly, that is why you are still alive. I felt that. Not in my mind. In my chest. A sharp, unwelcome awareness that maybe we were not talking about the same rules. I straightened, refusing to give him the reaction he was probably waiting for. You do not get to decide what I do with my life, I said. Or who sends me things. Or where I go. Something in his jaw tightened. It was small. Most people would miss it. I did not. You think this is about permission, he said. It is not. Then what is it about? I challenged. For a second, I thought he would answer. I thought he might actually say it out loud. But instead, he stepped back, creating distance again, putting control back where he preferred it. It is about information, he said. And right now, you are the only variable I do not have. That should have annoyed me. It did. But it also did something else. It made me realize that whatever this was, it had already gone further than I thought. I left his office without another word, but I could feel his attention follow me all the way down the hall. The days that followed only made it worse. Deals were postponed without explanation. Meetings he never missed were suddenly cancelled. People who usually had direct access to him were redirected or ignored. And every time I checked the cameras or passed through security, there it was again. That extra layer. That quiet adjustment. Always around me. I tested it. I changed my routine. Took different routes. Left earlier than scheduled. Stayed later than expected. Every time, within minutes, something shifted to match me. Doors unlocked before I reached them. Guards appeared where they should not have been. Even the bar inventory logs updated to reflect movements I had not recorded yet. It was seamless. Efficient. And completely intentional. I confronted him again 3 nights later, this time on the executive floor in front of 2 of his senior partners. I did not care who was watching. You need to stop, I said, my voice cutting through the low conversation around us. Whatever game you think you are playing, I am not part of it. The room went still. Not because I raised my voice. Because I spoke to him like that. His partners looked between us, uncertain, calculating whether they should stay or disappear. Sungjae did not look at them. He only looked at me. You already are, he said. No, I replied immediately. I am not yours to monitor, to question, or to control. That did it. Not in a loud way. Not in a dramatic shift. But something changed. The air sharpened. His composure did not break, but it tightened, like a line pulled too far. You think this is about ownership, he said, his voice lower now, more dangerous. It is not about you belonging to me. Then stop acting like it is, I snapped. For the first time, there was something unmistakable in his eyes. Not anger. Not exactly. Something closer to frustration, edged with something far more personal than I wanted to name. He stepped closer again, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, close enough that anyone watching would understand exactly how thin the line between us had become. You received a message, he said, each word precise. And you are standing here arguing with me instead of asking the only question that matters. I did not move. I did not step back. Which is? His gaze did not waver. Who thinks they can reach you? That landed harder than I expected. Not because of what he said. Because of how he said it. Like it was not hypothetical. Like it was already happening. I exhaled slowly, forcing my shoulders to stay relaxed. Maybe it is just a gift. He almost smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Nothing in my world is ever just a gift. I held his gaze one more second, then turned away before he could see anything shift in mine. Because as much as I hated it, as much as I resisted every part of this, there was something I could not ignore anymore. This was not curiosity. This was not jealousy. And whatever had started the moment that bottle arrived was not small. Because now, every move I made felt like it was being watched by more than just him. And for the first time, I had to ask myself a question I did not want to answer. If he was reacting like this, then what exactly had just been set in motion around me? The shift was subtle at first, the kind you only notice when you are already looking for it. It started the next evening, just before the main floor filled with its usual crowd of polished smiles and quiet power plays. I was reviewing the reservations list when I saw her name added to the executive section. No prior approval. No background note. Just a single-line entry, placed with the kind of authority that does not ask for permission. I did not need to guess who approved it. She arrived exactly at 9. Elegant. Controlled. The kind of woman who does not look around because she already assumes the room belongs to her. Her dress was understated but expensive, her posture flawless, her expression calm in a way that felt practiced. Korean. Beautiful in the precise, curated way that fits perfectly beside a man like Sung Jae. People noticed her immediately. Not because she demanded attention, but because she fit into his world too easily. I watched from the upper level as she was escorted directly to his table. He did not stand to greet her. He rarely does. But he gave her something else. Attention. Focused. Undivided. The same kind that had been following me for days. I told myself it did not matter. That this was business. That it always was with him. But something about the timing made it impossible to ignore. I forced myself to stay busy. Orders. Staff rotations. Inventory checks. Anything to keep my mind from drifting back to that table. But every time I glanced up, there they were. Speaking quietly. Leaning slightly toward each other. Not intimate. Not obvious. Just close enough to suggest familiarity. It should have been nothing. In this place, people build alliances over drinks every night. And yet, something about it felt deliberate. He knew I would see her. That realization settled in slowly, like a weight pressing down on my chest. This was not random. This was not coincidence. This was a move. I made my way downstairs, keeping my pace steady, my expression neutral. I stopped just long enough to check on a nearby table before approaching his. Neither of them acknowledged me immediately. That was new. Usually, he notices the moment I enter a room. Tonight, he let me stand there for a full second longer than necessary. Then his eyes lifted. Cold. Measured. Watching. This section is reserved, I said, my voice professional, controlled. You are not scheduled for guests tonight. The woman turned her head slightly toward me, studying me in a way that was almost polite. I was invited, she said, her English smooth, deliberate. I assume that is not a problem. I did not look at her. My attention stayed on him. It is when procedures are ignored. A flicker of something passed through his gaze. Approval. Or maybe interest. It was hard to tell. She is my guest, he said simply. Of course she was. I nodded once, sharp and efficient, then turned to leave. That should have been the end of it. It should have stayed contained, professional, irrelevant. But as I stepped away, I felt it again. That pull. That awareness of being watched. Not by the room. By him. And by her. The rest of the night stretched longer than usual. Every interaction felt sharper, every glance more loaded. I caught her looking at me more than once, her expression unreadable, like she was trying to solve something. I ignored it. I had to. Because the alternative meant acknowledging that I was part of whatever this was becoming. Around midnight, I stepped into the back corridor to catch a breath away from the noise. The quiet hit instantly, heavy and almost disorienting after hours of controlled chaos. I leaned against the wall for a second, closing my eyes, grounding myself. You do not like her. His voice cut through the silence before I could react. I opened my eyes to find him already there, standing a few feet away, his presence filling the narrow space. This is not about liking anyone, I replied, straightening. It is about maintaining standards. He studied me, that same sharp, assessing look that had not left him since the wine arrived. You are lying. I let out a short breath, something between a laugh and a challenge. You brought her here. What exactly are you trying to prove? That depends, he said quietly. What do you think I am trying to prove? I held his gaze, refusing to look away. That I am replaceable. The words landed between us, heavier than I expected. For a brief moment, something shifted in his expression. Not denial. Not agreement. Something more complicated. If that were true, he said slowly, I would not need to prove it. That answer should have ended the conversation. It should have clarified things. But instead, it did the opposite. It made everything less certain. Then what is this? I pressed. He stepped closer, not enough to trap me, but enough to make the distance irrelevant. This, he said, his voice lower now, almost dangerous, is me understanding a situation that you refuse to take seriously. There is nothing to understand, I shot back. A bottle showed up. That is it. His jaw tightened again, that same controlled reaction I had started to recognize. You still think that is all this is. And you still think everything revolves around you, I countered. Silence fell, thick and charged. Neither of us moved. Neither of us backed down. The tension between us was no longer subtle. It was visible. Tangible. Real. Then, unexpectedly, he stepped back. Be careful, he said. That was it. No explanation. No elaboration. Just a warning dropped into the space between us like it should mean something. I watched him walk away, my mind turning over his words, trying to make sense of something that refused to settle into logic. I told myself he was overreacting. That this was his world bleeding into mine. That I was still in control of where I stood. But as I returned to the main floor, something caught my attention. A detail I had missed before. The woman. She was no longer focused on him. She was watching me. Not casually. Not with curiosity. With intent. I slowed, just slightly, enough to confirm it. Her gaze did not shift when I met it. She did not look away. She did not pretend. She wanted me to see it. A cold realization slid into place, quiet but undeniable. This was not about competition. This was not about replacing me. And it was definitely not about jealousy. Because whatever role she was playing, it was not meant to push me out. It was meant to draw something out. From me. And as that thought settled in, something else followed right behind it, sharper and far more dangerous. Maybe I was not the target in this situation. Maybe I was exactly where someone wanted me to be. The garage was always quieter than the rest of the building, but that night the silence felt different. Thicker. Like sound itself had been pushed out and replaced with something heavier. I usually take the main exit after closing, but something in me shifted as I walked past it. A hesitation I could not explain. The kind that makes your skin tighten before your mind catches up. I told myself it was nothing. Just a long night. Just tension that had not settled. Still, I changed direction and headed down instead. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. Every second stretched, every movement sharper. When the doors opened, the cold air hit immediately, carrying that faint scent of oil and concrete that never quite leaves underground spaces. My heels echoed as I stepped out, the sound bouncing too loudly across the empty structure. I reached into my bag for my keys, already scanning the rows out of habit. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I had just taken 3 steps toward my car when I felt it. Not heard. Not seen. Felt. That shift again. The same pressure I noticed when the wine arrived, only now it was closer. Immediate. I stopped walking. Slowly turned my head. Nothing. Concrete pillars. Parked cars. Shadows stretching under fluorescent lights. I exhaled, steadying myself, and moved again. That was when the voice came from behind me. Friday. I froze. It was not loud. It did not need to be. It slipped into the silence like it belonged there, low and controlled, with an accent I could not place immediately. My fingers tightened around my keys, but I did not turn right away. I forced my breathing to stay even, my posture straight. You are earlier than expected, the voice continued. I turned then. He was standing between 2 columns, just far enough into the shadows to blur the details of his face, but close enough that I could see his outline clearly. Tall. Still. Watching. There was no rush in his stance, no aggression in his movement. That made it worse. I do not know who you think I am, I said, keeping my voice level, but you should leave. A quiet sound followed. Not quite a laugh. More like acknowledgement. You received the bottle, he said. So you know exactly what this is. My pulse hit harder, but I did not let it show. I received something without a name, I replied. That does not mean I am interested in whatever game you are playing. He stepped forward slightly, just enough for the light to catch part of his face. Clean. Composed. Eyes that did not blink often enough to feel natural. This is not a game, he said. It is a message. For who? For him. The answer landed instantly, sharp and undeniable. I felt it before I processed it. This had never been about me in the way I thought. Not at the start. Then you sent it to the wrong person, I said. Another small step forward. Measured. Intentional. No, he replied. I sent it to the only person he cannot ignore. That was the moment everything shifted. Not gradually. Not subtly. Completely. The wine. His reaction. The surveillance. The woman. It all snapped into place at once, forming a pattern I could no longer pretend I did not see. I was not part of the equation. I was the leverage. A slow chill moved through my chest, but I kept my expression steady. You are making a mistake, I said. I am not connected to him in the way you think. The man tilted his head slightly, studying me like he already knew the truth better than I did. He has already changed his behavior, he said. Cancelled deals. Redirected resources. Increased internal monitoring. A pause. All centered around you. My grip tightened. That does not mean anything. It means everything, he replied. The air between us sharpened. I could feel the distance, measure it, calculate how long it would take to move, to react, to run if I needed to. But something held me in place. Not fear. Not exactly. Awareness. You should leave, I repeated, quieter now, not as a command but as a warning. His gaze did not shift. It is already in motion, he said. Then tell him yourself, I said. Stay away from me. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, almost casually, he spoke again. He cannot protect you from what is coming. Before I could respond, a sound cut through the space. Footsteps. Fast. Precise. Not approaching from behind me. From the side. The man's attention flicked, just for a second. That was enough. The next moment moved too quickly to fully track. A shadow crossed my peripheral vision, followed by impact. Controlled. Efficient. The man barely had time to react before he was forced back, his balance breaking under a strike I did not see coming. Another movement followed, sharper, decisive, ending the confrontation before it could escalate. Silence returned just as quickly. I did not move. Did not speak. I was still processing what had just happened when I felt it again. Him. Sung-jae stood a few feet away, his posture composed, his breathing steady, like nothing about that moment had required effort. His attention moved briefly to the man on the ground, then back to me. You should not be here, he said. Not relief. Not concern. Control. I can say the same thing to you, I replied, my voice quieter than before but still steady. His eyes held mine for a second longer than necessary. Then he stepped closer, closing the distance in a way that felt final. What did he say to you? It was not a question. It never is with him. I exhaled slowly. He said the wine was a message. A flicker. Small, but there. And? He said it was meant for you. The silence that followed was different from before. Not empty. Not uncertain. Heavy with something I could not fully name. And you, I added, are the reason it was sent to me. That landed. I saw it in the way his expression tightened just slightly, in the way his gaze shifted not away from me but deeper, like he was recalculating something in real time. For the first time since this started, I saw the full shape of it in his eyes. Not confusion. Not anger. Recognition. You need to leave, he said. No, I replied immediately. You need to explain what is happening. A beat passed. Then another. And then he said it. You are not leaving my side anymore. The words settled into the air between us, heavier than anything that had come before. Not a suggestion. Not a request. A decision. I held his gaze, every instinct in me pushing back against the weight of it, against the implication behind it. I do not belong to you, I said. His expression did not change. This is not about belonging, he replied. Then what is it about? For a moment, I thought he would say it. I thought he might finally give me the truth without layers, without control. But instead, he stepped closer, just enough for his voice to drop, just enough for the words to land exactly where they needed to. It is about keeping you alive. And just like that, everything became real. I did not sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because my mind refused to settle. Every detail replayed in sharp fragments, the wine, the note, the man in the garage, and the way Sung-jae did not hesitate when it mattered. That was the part one could not ignore. He had not asked questions first. He had acted. Fast. Precise. Like this was not new to him. Like I had just stepped into something he had been expecting all along. By morning, the building felt different again. Not tense this time. Controlled. Locked down in a way that was almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Security rotations had shifted. Access points were tighter. Even the staff moved with a subtle awareness that something had changed, even if they could not name it. I could. It was me. I found him in his office, exactly where I knew he would be. He did not look surprised to see me. Of course he did not. He never is. You are going to tell me everything, I said, closing the door behind me. No hesitation. No soft approach. I was done being managed without answers. He studied me for a moment, like he was deciding how much truth I could handle. Then he spoke. You were never the target. I figured that out, I replied. What I want to know is why I was chosen. A brief pause. Then, finally, something real. Because you are the only variable I cannot predict. That should not have mattered. But it did. More than I wanted to admit. And that makes me useful, I said. It makes you exposed, he corrected. The word settled heavier than I expected. Exposed. Not weak. Not careless. Vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with him. So now what? I asked. You keep me under surveillance forever? His gaze did not waver. No, that caught me off guard. No? No, he repeated. Now you stay where I can see you. I almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. That sounds exactly the same. It is not, he said quietly. Surveillance is distance. This is protection. The distinction should have reassured me. It did not. Because the truth was simpler than that. Cleaner. More dangerous. You mean control, I said. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, he stepped closer. Not forceful. Not aggressive. Just certain. I mean survival. Silence followed, heavy and unshakable. I searched his expression for anything that suggested exaggeration. Fear. doubt. Anything human enough to soften what he was saying. There was nothing. Only certainty. I exhaled slowly, forcing my thoughts into something sharp, something usable. Who was he? Someone who knows my past, Sung Jae replied. And someone who understands that direct attacks are inefficient. So they go through me, I said. Yes. The simplicity of it made it worse. No drama. No hesitation. Just fact. I turned away for a second, processing it, feeling the weight of something I never asked for settling onto my shoulders. When I faced him again, my voice was steady. I am not running. I know, he said. I am not hiding either. I know. That irritated me more than it should have. Then stop acting like I need permission to exist. His expression shifted slightly, not softer, but sharper. More focused. You do not need permission, he said. You need to understand the cost. I held his gaze, refusing to look away. And what is that? A brief pause. Then, quietly, he answered. Anyone who gets close to you becomes a liability. The words landed harder than anything else he had said. Because this time, it was not about power. It was about consequence. I felt it then. Not fear. Not hesitation. Clarity. The man who could control everything in that world had lost control in one place. And somehow, that place was me. I crossed my arms, grounding myself in something solid. Then you have a problem, I said. His eyes narrowed slightly. Why? Because I do not belong to anyone, I replied. A beat passed. Then another. And then, for the first time since this began, something almost unguarded slipped through his expression. Not weakness. Not doubt. Something far more dangerous. I know, he said. Silence settled between us again, but this time it felt different. Not like a standoff. Not like a threat. Like a shift. Because the truth was no longer hidden behind questions or control. The man who could not control anything when it came to me was standing right in front of me. And whether I liked it or not, he was also the only one dangerous enough to keep me alive. I used to think power was about control, about who speaks and who listens, about who walks into a room and owns it without trying. I was wrong. Power is knowing exactly when you have no control left and choosing to stand there anyway. I did not choose this world, and I definitely did not choose to become a target in someone else's war. But I chose not to run. And maybe that is the most dangerous decision I have ever made. So tell me this, if you were in my place, would you walk away and stay safe, or stay and become untouchable in a world that could destroy you? If this story pulled you in, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what you would do.